I think we'll get started. We're recording, so anybody who is not with you today, you can share the recording with them after the meeting. Got some great speakers today. Going to share some really interesting work with you. Got Gail. First of all, we're going to have Peter Gail Tunstall from South Tyneside and Sunderland, and Gail and the team have created what looks like a really interesting game that is available online, and I'm sure Gail will tell us all about that. The Rise and Shine game, so looks very exciting. I'm sure there'll be lots of interest in that. Hopefully by the time Gail's finished, we'll welcome Dan Leverett and Charlotte Battersby from Wigan, Wrightington and Leigh. They're doing some great work over there in the Northwest. And then I've asked Alex Graham from our team to come and join us. We've just completed, I think I mentioned this in a previous update, or could have been on an email. We just completed an evaluation of the reconditioning games and the transfer into the ReconditionTheNation work. So Alex has kindly come along to share some of the outputs from that. And again, I think I've circulated the report, but I'll recirculate that afterwards. As usual, any questions, pop them in the chat and I'll pick them up as we go. And if we have chance at the end of each speaker, then we'll put them to Gail and to Gail and Charlotte and Alex, or we might just sort of hold them all up and then we'll ask them all at the end. But there's usually a few, but just pop them in the chat. So Gail, if you're ready, I'm going to hand over to you and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. So, let's just see what happens and see if I'm able to do that. While I'm attempting to do that, I'll just introduce myself. So my name is Gail Tunstall and I work for South Tyneside and Sunderland NHS Foundation Trust, and I'm fortunate enough to work in a quality improvement role which is focused around our older people. So I'm just going to try and see if we can share this. Can everybody see that?
Not yet. Oh, something. Yep.
Oh,
it's
looks
happening.
like it's happening.
It's happening.
There you go. There we go. So how do I do that from? No, we don't want that. We want that one. Oh, apologies, guys.
That's all right.
That's about as much as I can do with the technology, I think. So yes, this is where I am. This is where I work. So topic program is an older person's improvement collaborative that the trust developed about 4 years ago. We all know what happened to the world a couple of years ago, so it has had a bit of a hiatus. But there's some great things that have happened, and the topic was created really for a number of reasons: recruitment, retention in older people's care, education for those staff working in that area, because there is a bit of a gap there, patient experience and patient care. So Rise and Shine fits in the patient experience element of that. So I'm just going to whistle through, because I know we've got lots of lovely speakers to hear, but just to give you a little bit of context. So we know, and we've got some experts on the call, they'll know that it's really important to get our older people up and moving, and when they come to us, we don't want them to decondition, we don't want to lose muscle mass, we don't want them to lose muscle strength. So getting them up, getting them moving is really important. And encouraging people to get up and get out of bed can be difficult because it's boring in hospital. The time seems to last 10 times longer than it would an average day for us when we're busy and we've got no time to do the things we need to do. So this is where it was recognised that actually, what can we do to encourage this with our patients? So just a little bit of information. We know that games are really good at engagement with whatever age, and we know that older people do like it's cards and dominoes, and they like to read a newspaper and things like that. So the benefits of those can be linked to rehabilitation, and it's an enjoyable way for rehabilitation as well. It can also reduce their stress. It can reduce stress levels for family members as well as the patients, and give them a better experience for when they're away from home. So where it started with us, this gentleman here is called Bob Ollie, and he's a famous artist and sculptor up where I live in the northeast. And at the time, he was a family member, a relative of a patient in hospital, and his mum was a patient with us and was complaining to him when he visited about how bored she was and didn't have anything to do, and the ward was boring and she missed playing bingo with her sister. So Bob approached us and said, you know, what can we do? There's got to be something we can do. There's got to be something that we can create, or we can get involved with you and I to create something that would make it less boring for the family when they're staying in hospital. So our aim was to develop a ward-based activity everybody's got an opportunity to take part in. So it encourages physio staff, nursing staff, healthcare staff, anybody really that's got any part to play in the ward, to get involved with some with the patients, to do some physical activity of any kind that they're clinically and personally ready to do, which we would hope would then reduce deconditioning. But it's fun and it's sociable, and it encourages some interaction between all different members of the ward. So this is where the Rise and Shine concept came from, and it was, like I said, based on games really, and the therapy around games, and loosely, as Bob would tell the story about playing bingo and things like that, because that was what his mum and his auntie used to like to do. So there was our concept. So development was the next stage. So it really was a co-produced QI project with nurses and doctors, people from the QI team. Innovation team were really important with the development and the links, and Bob played a really significant part in the design of the game and the concept initially, as I mentioned. And because of his skills, being an artist and a sculptor, he just was great with all of the design concepts, and he did all of the artwork that I'll show you in a little while. So it was a really good example of a co-produced piece of work. So following on from that, we had to do some testing. So in this picture, you can see some of our lovely patients and staff. They got really creative and papered newspaper boxes, shoe boxes, sorry, with paper. And Bob sort of designed some initial tiles, which is what those, I don't know if you can see me pointing to this bottom right hand corner there. These are called tiles, is what we've called them. And they've got numbers and pictures on, and I'll show you a little bit later. But we just had to test the concept really around how could we use it, how could we get people involved, and really what is the aim of the game. So the aim of the game really is just to engage conversation about the numbers, the colours, the letters, the pictures, sorry, with patients, and incorporate their physio goals, whether it be the walk 10 steps to post their tile, the chooser one because they're like, it's got an elephant or a monkey or whatever, or they're like the number 6. And then within that, they pick their tile, walk to wherever the post box is, which is what you can see. We've done one in red there, we've done one with balloons on there, and the patient posts that tile so that if the physio goal is to walk a few steps, they would get up and do that. If a patient, like we've got our lovely lady in the middle there, who wasn't able to get up, we would bring the post box to her so she could still be included and have some fun and have some chat and stuff like that. So once we've tested it, we then had to work with our innovation team, which have been great throughout, to then explore the development of this game from a concept to an actual game. So Focus Games are a company that, if anybody doesn't know of them, is a game. They're not like where you would buy Twister or Scrabble. They're a company that develop games for the health service industry. So we worked with them to develop the concept and the go from shoebox to an actual made game. And within that, there was some intellectual property that we needed to manage, because Bob was the creator and he had the concept of the game and approached us and we developed it. It still sat with Bob as owning the IP. So Bob kindly agreed to sign over the IP to the organisation. So any profits made from sales would come directly back into the trust to be reinvested. So we had to do some contractual stuff with that and have that signed and all of that. So those were sort of happening in the background. And then we get to, we have a prototype of the game. So we then needed to make sure that the prototype matched what we had in our concept. It delivered the aim, we were able to use it. So here are some lovely pictures of our ward staff and our patients. with physio and nurse and staff, using the game with a couple of patients on a on one of our wards on the Sunderland site, and this is a predominantly dementia ward. So these two ladies had great fun, and you can see on the bottom left there how enthusiastic one of our patients was to be able to walk down the ward and post that tile. One of the lady up on the right hand side there wasn't particularly mobile, but really enjoyed being able to try to get up and post that tile after some discussion and some chat. And we actually were quite naughty and moved this a little bit further away each time she got closer, just to see if we could get her to walk a little bit further. And she had great fun. She did say it was afterwards she'd had such a lovely time and it was a great idea, and she ended up having conversations with this lady here that was on the ward that she'd never met. So it was really nice. So we'll move on from our prototype testing to our finished product. So here is what it looks like. So here are the tiles, and you can see, and I will show you the box. I don't know if anybody can see me. These are the size of the tiles. So they're quite a nice size, and they've got numbers and some really great animations on the back there. And this is our post box. So we've got the section there where you post the tile in. We've got all of the animated, and I'm sorry, it's really fuzzy, and the instructions on the side, which are really simple. And it comes flat pack to then aid with, you're not going to pay a fortune to get it posted and stuff like that. It's all been signed off by IPC. Everybody has made sure that it fits the bill for being on a ward environment. I've put the link in there, unashamedly plug, if anybody would like to purchase a game or have a look on Focus Games website, and it tells you a little bit more information. You're more than welcome to go and have a look. So then what have we done since then? So we've introduced it onto our wards, and we are aiming for it to be used in other forms of activities that are happening on the ward, physio to get involved and ward staff to get involved. And then exploring commercialization, which is difficult to try and do that when it's health related and, you know, we're not for profit and stuff like that. And just sharing it with local care settings and other trusts to say, you know, this is out there. Have you thought about incorporating it in activities that you're already doing on the wards? And is it something that you could maybe use? And then spreading the word. Obviously, thank you, Nick, for inviting me today to share it. But we've entered it into a poster competition at last year's HSJ. We won that category for vulnerable adults. I presented it there last year, which was great. I've took it to the regional innovation conference in June of this year and shared it there. So it's great just now to share what we've done, how we've done it, to show that actually it's really quite easy. It doesn't have to be complicated. Something can develop from a really, really simple idea of what can we do to relieve the boredom, and then realizing actually how that links with deconditioning and support and movement and getting people up and engagement with staff and families and patients. So I think that's probably a really whistle stop of what Rise and Shine is and how we got to where we are now. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take them.
That's brilliant, good Gail. Really, yeah, lots of applause there in the room. Such a fantastic, just a simple idea, isn't it? I think that's the simplicity of it, and the really responding to what our patients want, or they've said to us, you know, rather than with, you know, we often have a good idea, but that's just very much a direct response. So brilliant. So we've got some hands up already, and we've also got some comments in the chat. So keep an eye on that. But I'm going to go to, I think it was Kirsty. Was it Kirsty?
Yep.
Kirsty, I saw your hand up. Come on. You're never normally shy to say something.
No, I put it down again.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay, Peter, over to you.
How much would that cost to purchase?
I believe it's £25, £25.99, I think it is, to purchase.
Yeah.
They are actually, at the moment, Focus Games have a giveaway month. So get in quick, put your details in, and you may well be eligible to receive a copy free.
Just going to put the link in the chat for you,
yeah.
Gail. So anybody wants
Thank
to
you.
follow this link.
Yes, I'm sorry, I've took the presentation down.
That's right. There you go. There's the link in the in the chat. So click on there and have a look. Yeah, so get in quick if there's a. But even I'm sure there's a bit of League of Friends money or trust fund money or a little bit of non-paid budget somewhere. These are it's not big money, and you think you got something that's worked up there. In terms of next steps, then Gail, you've worked through the prototype, you've got the model now. What's any thoughts on sort of further next steps for it? Is this just about promoting it wider, or there's
Yeah,
anything?
yeah. I mean, it would be great to promote it wider and see it used, wider than our trust and locally. It's that thing, isn't it, around using it and it being viable on the wards, and it's about a whole team approach, really. It's not just to say that it's nurse and staff are expected to do it, or physio staff, and it's not an additional thing to do. It's part of your working day. So if you're going to do an activity, this is a really good one to do, and it's that embedding that is the next sort of approach to make sure that staff are confident and keen and able to think, oh, actually I'll do an activity and this is a really good one to do. Because I think a lot of staff always think we're giving them something else to do. It's not. It's about trying to educate them that this is something that would benefit them as well as the staff. But next steps, yes, every given opportunity to promote it and to tell the story, really.
So that's why you're here, I suppose, and anybody on this call wants to sort of share that, well, and I'll send it with the details of the pack. So if you can ping me over your slides, and I'll share that with the group. There's this is a growing group, and we're over 500 now in the group, so I'll share that with those teams as well. Just in terms of understanding so two things for me before we wrap up on we're putting you on the spot too much.
That's fine.
I suppose for me, the observation there from what you just said was around this it gives a sense of something that anybody can use and does give those people who aren't necessarily that confident in, well, what can we do? If there are certain people we've come across who are very enthusiastic, absolutely get it, but never really quite sure, well, what can we do? And I suppose the game gives something that people can attach themselves to, and then, as you say, it doesn't become a therapy thing, it doesn't become a nursing thing, it just becomes this is what we can do collectively. Is that something that you picked up on? Is it on particular wards at the moment that you've noticed in your organisation? Is it starting to spread across different parts of the organisation?
Yeah, I think it's still remaining within our REM, our elderly medicine wards, and it's that barrier. It's actually not just for our older people. We can use it in wherever, and that's where we're sort of getting to. It's about sort of explaining that it doesn't have to be anything about. Although we did aim for it to encourage movement and to get up and move around, actually it can promote engagement and conversation, and it can prompt the artistry is fantastic on them, and I've sat with a patient and just talked about that, and then it prompts conversation and it leads you elsewhere, so you don't always end up playing the game, but it does also encourage conversation and engagement, which is another good thing around patient's experience. And it can't be a bad thing, although it was aimed at getting people up and getting people moving. It's still really good to prompt engagement.
Yeah, so I think it's a really important point, to share with everybody here today, that that sometimes the purpose and the initial intent about something is one thing, and then you realise through unintended consequences that you've achieved something completely different. And this movement really is about reducing harms as a result of deconditioning, but deconditioning can be physical and mental, cognitive deconditioning. And you talk about those conversations people are having with each other, just raises the cognitive levels in people who, the start of this was about being bored, and we all know how boredom affects our cognitive function. Just that, and so I can see this being, like with other activities like this, being multifaceted. In terms of that, and this kind of naturally links on to Alex in a moment. Are you planning to do a little bit of any kind of evaluation in terms of, is it having? It's very difficult to measure deconditioning, but in terms of the impact from not just from a the patients, well, yes, from including patient satisfaction, staff satisfaction, but in terms of some of the impacts of reducing deconditioning on time spent in bed, or the amount of people that are getting up and moving. Are you doing any kind of measurement?
I think there's always the aim, isn't there, to do some measurements to sort of, it's not proof of, but it's to show. It's difficult when it's part of a suite of things to say that this individually has prevented or it has improved. We are doing sort of reviewing activities within the trust and reviewing how it sits in with that. So that is restarted that piece of work, so it would be incorporated with that. I think we've had some patient experience feedback initially from it to say, like the lady who said, I had a great time, I really enjoyed it, and they're so valuable, but they're difficult to measure, aren't they?
Yeah.
So yes, measurement is important, but
I'm also conscious we don't suck the life out of fun stuff as well. I think it has to run its course, don't you? So it's almost in 6 months' time, or something. But just allow it to grow. I'm going to post something in the chat now about this idea that fun is frivolous and fun is just a bit warm and fluffy, but actually there's a lot of evidence behind the efficacy of fun and making things fun, and that sort of game theory. There's a huge amount of research now that sits behind actually when you turn something into a game. As human beings, we respond really well to that. And there's a couple of examples I'm going to pop in the chat now around how what can be sometimes quite mundane activities, when they're made fun, actually produce some amazing results.
And I would say, sorry, the incorporation. I think the lady who wasn't able to get up thought she couldn't get involved. And we encouraged her to have the conversation and pick a tile, and we would bring it to her. So that in itself made her feel a lot better. And like you said, it's that mental deconditioning as well. She was able to participate, or when she thought she couldn't. So it's inclusive because of what it is. It just includes everybody.
Brilliant. Stand down, Gail. You're doing a brilliant job.
Thank you.
Good sales pitch. So there's a few little, probably some more comments in the chat as you carry on, but please have a read of those afterwards. It looks like Dan and Charlotte from Wigan, unless they're on the call, they want to pop up on the screen. Unless I've missed them, I don't think they've obviously been waylaid somewhere, so we're probably going to move on. And a beautiful link from Gail in terms of that work, in terms of the evaluation. I am going to move on to Alex, and Alex, you may have a little bit more time now to tell us about all the amazing work you've done. But again, any questions for Alex as we go, pop them in the chat, and we'll pick them up afterwards. But for now, Alex, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Nick. And firstly, thanks, Gail. It's really inspiring and great to hear about all your fantastic work. So, yeah, and if I can be of any help to do any kind of evaluation or measurement, please do reach out. I'm happy to have a conversation about that. So, yeah, so I'm Alex. Hi, everybody. For sort of don't know me, I'm Alex Graham. I work for eSyst, and I'm the Research and Evaluation Manager in eSyst. And my role, I guess, is to provide sort of an evidence base for some of the work that eSyst do, and to kind of give a little bit of measurement and underpin kind of our initiatives and interventions that we do with systems and sites, and look at the impact and effectiveness of us and those initiatives. So as part of that, we really were interested in looking at the effectiveness and kind of how specifically the reconditioning games impacted and had an effect on sites and systems that took part. So I'm going to share with you that I think what Nick mentioned earlier, that he's already shared the report that I've created as a result of that evaluation. So I'm just going to share that. I'm not going to spend too much time because it is quite in depth, the report on PowerPoint, but I'll flick through and sort of talk through the outputs of that. So I'm just going to share from my current slide. Bear with me. Hopefully everybody can see that. Yeah, great. So I'm trying not to teach water suck eggs here, because I'm very assured that you already know this slide. So this is a bit of an overview for the purpose of the report. So the purpose and the aims of the campaign, and I guess from my perspective, so I haven't got a clinical background, so I was really interested in understanding what the games was about, you know, what is Recondition the Nation, what's deconditioning. So for me, I kind of came into this with very much fresh eyes, just with my kind of evaluative kind of methods, sort of research methods background. But one of the key queries that I wanted to sort of get to enable me to kind of design a bit of a method to evaluate this was around the outcomes and the aims, the objectives of the programme. So, you know, we're looking at preventing deconditioning, all these sort of words that are in bold on here. We kind of identified as those outcomes that we wanted to measure and identify within any of the sort of medal submissions that were associated as part of the game. So things like improving hospital discharges, improving patient outcomes, raising awareness of deconditioning, sharing best practice, and promote testing and embedding of small scale changes. So, and as I said, this is specifically looking at that period that the games ran from. So that was from the 1st of November to through to the 30th of April 2023. I'll just move on to the next slide, if it's going to allow me to do that. Yeah, there we go. So just as a quick reminder, so we were looking specifically at the submissions that were made as a result of the games in order to kind of gain medals. So that's the bronze, silver, and gold category medals. So all teams that took part in the games were invited to apply for those virtual medals, and they were aligned with 3 categories associated with those intended outcomes that were just on that previous slide there. So the categories were bronze, silver, and gold, and we can see here that bronze to be awarded where initiatives are being tested or taking place, but those silver and gold submissions specifically were to be awarded where there was evidence where some of the initiatives are starting to make a bit more of a difference and have an impact in some patients. So teams were kind of, you know, teams kind of needed to provide that more detailed submission around what the specific difference is to be made, and I'll come back to that in a little while. But just to make you aware of that difference in those submission there. So I'll just move on to the actual evaluation approach. So we had a mixed methods application in this evaluation. So we looked at the reach of the campaign specifically, so how far across the country Recondition the Nation was spread. So we looked at engagement with online resources through the Futures website, I'm sure you're all very aware of, and attendance for those virtual events that took place throughout the games. We then looked at medals by medal type, region, and organisation. And then the Twitter and analysis snapshot of the Twitter or X engagement as it's now known. And then to look at the impact of the campaign, we did a qualitative retrospective impact analysis of those medal submissions. So we used, as I said, the silver and gold medal submissions only, because they were the ones that were required to have kind of that evidence and sort of that difference that was kind of described, sort of that rich information that was required to be submitted to gain those medals. And we used three case studies that were submitted and 6 podcasts. And the great thing about this evaluation is that we didn't have to do any field work. So all of the submissions and the medal submissions that we used in order to kind of analyze that information, we used outcomes associated with the games to kind of do a bit of a thematic analysis of what was there and what did we find as a result of those medal submissions. So I'll move on to the results. So in terms of the analysis of engagement with online resources, we found that there were moderated views between 236 to 859 a month. So it's quite variable, but 175 to 489 total document downloads from Recondition the Nation. And between October 22 and April 23, that was 2,929 moderated views and 2,314 document downloads. So really good numbers. Really good numbers there. Oh, can I just ask for everybody to go on mute? Is that okay? Sorry, thanks for that.
I just picked that up.
Oh, thanks, Nick. That's great. No worries. So yeah, we can see from the graphs below that the numbers were sustained throughout the campaign. So there was a bit of a peak in November, but that, as I said, that was when the games started. So you imagine that the first initiation of the games, everyone was kind of looking at this, the future started downloading those documents. But then we did have quite a consistent level of numbers throughout the rest of the months. I'll move on to the next slide. So in terms of medals awarded by category, so a total of 1,290 medals were awarded during the Recondition the Nation campaign. And this is just an overview of the difference in medals. So in terms of bronze, silver and gold, as I mentioned before, the silver and gold were the ones that had to have that kind of really hard sort of evidence underneath it and sort of showcase the difference that were made for patients as a result of those outcomes. And then medals awarded by region. Now, this is quite heavily focused, and there were quite high numbers within the east of England. I'm sure we all know that that's where the games kind of and the Recondition the Nation movement sort of originated, way back when. But we can still see that there was some spread throughout the rest of the country. And we've got the Midlands sort of being the second most common region to be taking part. And then in terms of ICS, so we actually had 76%, even though those regional graphs look slightly more favourable towards the east of England, we actually had 76 participation rate across all of the 42 ICSs, which is really great, really high. So 97 individual organisations were awarded male, and there was participation from Scotland and Wales. We had 13 organisations. 13 organisations were awarded 10 or more medals of those 97 that took part. And that graph there just shows the 10 most engaged ICSs by number of medals awarded. Skip through onto the next slide. So in terms of Twitter engagement, this is just a really nice graphic that shows the kind of the variation in sort of mentions and engagement on Twitter or X throughout the games. It's just a little bit of a visual there, and we can see that Twitter X monthly impressions kind of maintained post games after the games finished in that April 23. So we can see that it continues into February 24, just down here on this visual there. So in terms of the impact, so just to give you a bit of an overview of what we did for some of the thematic analysis and the impact analysis. So when we looked at the medal submissions, we looked at them via a coding framework that was developed, made up of the 6 categories, using that qualitative data from the medal submissions, and that was 792. So it's quite a big, quite a large volume of submissions to go through to kind of identify some of these outcomes and these categories that are identified in text. Now we can see that these 3 categories at the bottom there, they're the actual medal categories. But when looking at some of the documentation for the Recondition the Nation, some of the theory around it, we wanted to make sure that we included these 3 things as well, because they were quite standoutish. And when we kind of reviewed some of the submissions in the first instance, we saw that these 3 things did play quite a big part in some of the submissions, and so some of the submissions didn't specifically align to those 3 categories in terms of the medal categories. Then in terms of the making the difference category, now we can see that these other 5 kind of categories are quite straightforward. It's quite easy to kind of identify when a submission supported someone to get moving, or when a submission supported staff to keep active and well. There was quite clear evidence to suggest that's a really easy category to identify a submission in. But the making the difference is I would suggest it's quite broad in terms of how we might interpret that. So we further analysed that making a difference category to actually understand what that was, and kind of the differences that were made in those categories there. So I'll just move on. So this is kind of a results overview. So we've quantified those categories. So we can see that the majority of submissions were those making a difference category, which is why we then further analysed that. And the others were kind of supporting to get moving and supported staff to keep active and well. The least identified was there improving people's independence. And then in terms of the breakdown of making a difference, so we continue to use that coding framework that I mentioned earlier, and use these same categories to kind of continue to quantify the making a difference category. And we've identified that within this category, the outcomes are present in terms of these numbers. And then so these next few slides, I will flick through these slides because they are quite text heavy. But these are some of the examples of what's been done as a result of these categories. So we've got kind of the descriptive in terms of improving in people's independence. We've introduced new ways of working, introduction of new roles, monitoring patients in the community to keep people at home where possible. And then adjacent to that, we've got the evidence of where this was found. So again, that was why we used those silver and gold submissions in terms of this qualitative analysis. And I'll just move on to helping people get home from hospital sooner. So I think what we wanted to get at from this evaluation was the presentation of the submissions in the way that there was such fantastic work done throughout the games. And so we've got examples of specific improvements and initiatives that were created as a result of taking part. And we just wanted to present this in a way that shows, this is fantastic work and this is fantastic learning, that other sites and systems could potentially look at and identify with. So again, this is the hospital, helping people get home from hospital sooner. So we've got the evidence here that suggests there was reduction in hospital length of stay across different sites. New virtual wards were created, very strong patient feedback on new wards which have achieved accreditation. No longer having inpatients with a length of stay exceeding 100 days. So some fantastic outcomes there achieved as a result of the games. And then the reducing moral injury, we've got new roles that have been created, things like ward activity creators, domestic abuse practitioners, dementia support workers are ensuring a phone call is facilitated to loved ones every day. And it was, for me personally, not being clinical and not necessarily being as close to, some of this work as you guys are, it was really inspiring for me to work through these submissions and read them and go, wow, this is great work. This is just brilliant and really kind of makes my work a little bit more meaningful instead of sort of sifting through hundreds of submissions of data. It was really insightful. So in terms of the making a difference category, we've kind of themed these in terms of learning and development. That was kind of one of the differences that were made. So for some staff, so cross-divisional learning space, internal newsletters. Then there were process improvements, mostly to enable more person-centered care. That was one of the themes that came out of the making a difference. And then in terms of examples of what have been done, we've got improving patient experiences and all these examples here in terms of how that's been done. Inventing games, so similar to what Gail was saying earlier, for campaigns for patients and staff, things like basketball, keep me mobile, all these fantastic examples of the games that were created as a result of Reconditioning the Nation. And then we've got even more examples and evidence of what's been achieved on this slide here. The supporting patients to get moving, so encouraging getting dressed and sitting out of bed for meal times or other social occasions, daily therapy goals, ward-based exercise classes, and then again further evidence of what's been achieved here. So we can see that there's been improvements in outcome measures here. There's some data that's been evident, and that was kind of the submissions. Some of them had quite a lot of data incorporated into them, but then others were very much more descriptive, so that they were quite variable in terms of the submissions themselves and what they included and involved. But it was just a really nice way to get some kind of qualitative analysis done on these submissions. And then the final outcome was supporting staff to keep active and well. And it didn't initially say psychological and physical well-being, but we've kind of included this in the analysis because there was some specific examples of how staff might themselves keep physically active, but then a lot of it was around kind of the psychological safety of staff and the fact that they're able to care for their patients much more and much better, and they felt like they were doing their, they were able to do their job in the way that they really wanted to, and that made them feel much more valued and wanted to go to work and much more motivated in that way. So we've added that psychological well-being in there as well. This is a bit of a summary finding slide of all of the slides I've just talked to, so I won't spend too much long on here, but we've kind of got the subcategories along the side here that I've just talked through, and then we've bolded some of the specific differences that were made relating some of those categories that I've just talked through. And then in terms of the limitations of the evaluation itself, this doesn't necessarily mean limitations of the games itself, but obviously with every evaluation, we have to have some limitations. So there was quite a lot of variation in the level of information provided in medal submissions. There was no kind of audit process involved in terms of submitting that medal. So everyone who made a medal submission was automatically awarded a medal. So this could kind of create a duplication amongst organisations and teams, but this was completely done to encourage that submission and encourage engagement with the game. So completely understand and agree why that was the case. So we don't have any information from teams that did not take part in this campaign. And obviously, as we saw earlier, a large proportion of data comes from one ICB, which is the place where the campaign was founded. So I think in future, it might be nice to kind of understand why others potentially didn't take part, or what's happening in the sort of areas that aren't necessarily cited in some of this work. And then in terms of conclusions, firstly, we recognise the efforts that have gone before us to raise the profile of this work. You know, it's a fantastic piece of work, and we thank all of the sites and systems that have taken part in the games. Based on the information in the submissions provided, the campaign encouraged good practice across the teams, and we can make reasonable assumptions that activities and initiatives did indeed make a difference and had positive outcomes on the positive impacts on the outcomes associated with the campaign. However, evaluative evidence is lacking within some of the medal submissions, specifically that bronze category, which is the ones that we kind of avoided sort of in-depth thematic analysis. So for future, it would be nice to do a little bit more of longer term impact and financial evaluation methods. So with some of the medal submissions, we obviously talk about data being present. So can we do a little bit more with that? Can we explore sort of a bit more of a case study on site, whether there's been differences made in terms of length of stay and the use of virtual wards and things like that? And can we kind of, I'd be really interested to understand if the games and if the activities, obviously they are, thanks to Gail for sharing, but if they're still sort of present and active in the sites that took part in these games. So it'd be good to do a little bit of future work, but again, it's we'll see how that goes. But that's me actually.
Brilliant.
I've come to
Thank
the end of
you,
my slides,
Alex.
so
Amazing.
I'll stop talking.
I mean, brilliant. One of the things that we, in retrospect, did the evaluation, and in typical me fashion, I don't do that kind of detail to start off with, which is why Alex is brilliant at that. It's helpful to take the learning that when we do something similar, we won't necessarily do the games again, but with something similar, we can build in some of the learning from this evaluation to fill in some of the gaps that we did before. But primarily, this is for you guys. This is very much for you, not necessarily just to a massive round of applause for the work that you've done and are doing, but also to create that compelling argument if you need it. I know a lot of people have said, sometimes it's very difficult to get other people on board. Now we've got a little bit of evidence to kind of back that up. I'm going to move on really quick. Any questions you've got for Alex, pop in the chat. Alex, keep it on the chat, because we have Dan and the team from Wigan, Wrightington and Leigh some major technical difficulties getting on today, but they are with us. I think on Claire, I think it's on everyone's crowded around your screen at the moment, are they? Are you still with us?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yes, we are. We're here.
Yeah, good afternoon. Apologies for the delay. We tried to get on at Wigan College and it wouldn't let us, so we've had to drive back to the hospital and jump back on here. So,
well, thanks for making the effort to join us. So, over to you. I'm going to give the floor to you and not take any more of your time.
Perfect. So, I'm Dan. I'm the ward leader for the community assessment unit at Royal Albert Edward Infirmary, and I'm here today with.
I'm Claire. I'm a therapy practitioner, and I run a lot of the activities and oversaw the Recondition the Nation on the ward.
So it's just a whistle-stop tour, really. I'm going to share a presentation that we've done with you all and go through our appreciative inquiry to recondition CAU. So if you bear with me a second, I'll just share the presentation. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep, all good.
Yeah.
So,
Perfect. So, as I said, it's just a quick tour around our appreciative inquiry. We thought we'd take a different approach to usual. I know that obviously other trusts are doing very similar work in fashions, but we've put a different kind of model to it. So we came up with a definition to ward lead enablement by measuring harm and incorporating deconditioning in all the root cause analysis for adverse events. So we've been working with our governance team and looking at how, when patients are deconditioning, how it's captured, and working with our auditing team to make sure that this is being tracked. Initially at the start of the year, we did have a few staffing issues. I've been on the unit since January, and we did start off with one therapist in January, and we're nearly at a full staffing model now. So one of the issues that we were finding is that over a weekend, where the therapy gaps were, that we were going home on a Friday, coming back on a Monday, and quite a lot of our patients were changing pathways, and mobility was deteriorating, and they were physically deconditioned on the ward. Then we looked at the discovery to appreciate what it is. Like I said, our operational team were auditing length of stay. Therapy team have had a massive involvement. Like I said, Claire and Charlie and their team, with the staffing that the model that they've been before on and where they've come to now, it did made such a significant difference on the ward. We're using interactive Rita, which is our interactive technical device, NPJ paralysis resources, obviously Recondition the Nation groups. We have visited quite a lot of trusts within the northwest of the UK. One of them was Bevan Court, and we looked at their model and looked at things that they were doing with their patients, and how their therapy model was. Engagement activities with the patients, and we are a transitioning unit at the moment. So previously we were a bit of a social holding area, but like I said, we're coming to post in January, and the ward is transitioning into what we want to be a 72-hour model. So we've got to kind of act fast and think out the box a little bit with this. We've got MDTs, multiple MDTs that are involved in this. Like I said, the NPJ paralysis. We do art club with our with Jane, who's one of our reverends. She comes quite a couple of times, sometimes a couple of times a week, sometimes a couple of times a month. We have like daily newspapers that are created for the patients, and therapy competencies as well. So what our dream is, we've managed to get some CPD funding for our staff members, and we've got 10 staff members who will be doing the certified seating instructors courses. We have a collaboration with Wigan College in regards towards like a partnership with Wigan College in regards to health and beauty, and we're looking at the whole curriculum really at Wigan College. So we started a pilot for health and beauty, and staff from the college and students are coming in and doing engagement activities with the patients, such as massages, hair, nails, beauty, and then we're going to roll onto art. We've got science, we've got sports, we've got the whole curriculum there, history, and once this pilot is finished, that's where we're going, meeting them this afternoon to pick this up again and make sure we've got a full 12-month plan with the college to give that engagement to the patients as well. We're doing a lot of ward-based teaching. We're doing meeting a lot of ESIS groups across the country, and getting ideas from other trusts as well, because I think it's vital. Some of the information and some of the research that's previously been done. I'm quite a novice really to this. My background is trauma, orthopedic surgery, so coming onto a frailty unit and predominantly looking at the therapy side of things, it's changed my mindset completely, and I think we're kind of trying our best to embrace that. The design, I won't go through all the design there, but it just says how we're going to achieve where we want to be, and the destiny. Like I said, we're aiming to go from our average length of stay at the moment is 7 to 10 days. That was before we started doing all these interactions, engagements, partnerships. We're currently down to 5 to 7 days, and we are aiming for that 72-hour turnaround of patients. Obviously, there's a lot of transition on the ward, and some of this won't be relevant for this forum, but we are essentially going to be removing A&E from our ward and taking direct referrals from MWAS and step up, step downs from community, and making sure that there's wraparound services there as well. What we have been doing is the golden hour in the morning, which I know it's used in other trusts. Like I said, coming from predominantly surgery, we've taken a completely different approach to our morning routines. straight after handover, nurses, therapy staff, healthcare assistants, everybody, it's all hands on deck really. So we're coming out of handover, we're not doing any medications, we're not doing any other interventions before all the patients are up and out of bed. So as a collective team, we get all the patients who can physically get out of bed, we get them out of bed. Healthcare's, nurses, therapists all team up, and then once all the patients are physically up and out of bed, then we can start our medication rounds, and then we can do that therapy assessment for the mobilities and the baselines whilst we're capturing that in the morning. The weekend plans, so there was quite a few staffing gaps over the weekend, and we've done a lot of work with our volunteer service within the trust, so we will be having weekend activity coordinators, and we have a significant amount of volunteers on the ward as well at the moment who are giving that interim engagement and activities with the patients that sometimes we can't offer, which is quite a shame really. Just move on to the next slide. So with the Three Wishes funding, we did an initial fundraiser in April of this year, and we raised nearly £600 from the ward for the fundraiser that we did. We did a raffle and quite a few good prizes, to be honest, but we applied for funding from the trust, and we managed to secure nearly 7,000 for engagement equipment, because we recognised quite quickly that there was a big gap in the way that we were interacting with patients, and Claire and Charlie and our therapy team have come up with that, like a weekly planner of activities with the patients, a daily planner, and I think with the college coming in, we've investing in a treadmill that's specific to dementia patients. Obviously, we've got an area where we can use like karaoke for patients, we can do exercises, and we've got managed to get an interactive device called the Jolly Trolley, which is it's quite a good bit of kit really. It's interactive for the patients. It's got themes that you can put on there. It's got interactive quizzes, displays, and you can change the trolley to make it into kind of patient experience where they're looking at, like, if there's a pastime that patients really like, or if there's a set activity that patients like, it's quite a good device really to have. So that's once we've got all this equipment in, then we'll be building more and more on that aspect of it as well. I won't go into too much detail about the frailty assessment pathway, but this is just looking into how we've changed direction from a social holding area to a frailty pathway. And we've managed to capture, we were getting quite a lot of inappropriate patients, inappropriate transfers onto our unit, but now we've managed to push back slightly from a bed management perspective. We are getting the right clientele coming through the door, which is then enabling us to give that right patient care and the right therapy care, and ensuring that the patient is appropriate for the unit, so we can give those interventions really. So, but that's just to note that we have, since we started our frailty pathway, we've seen a significant increase of the most appropriate patients coming through the unit. Like I said, the average length of stay, so that's looking up to March 2024. We are starting looking at the most recent data is not on there, unfortunately, but the average stay, like I said, was December. If you look at December 2023, we're on nearly 10 days, and then we've took over in January, put quite a few changes in place, and things are going in the right direction. Obviously, we would like to, we will, and we would like to get that number down even further. And I think if we carry on doing these kind of activities and engagements, then I think it will be on that right path. Some of the corporate objectives for our trust is just, I won't go into too much detail again there, but it's looking at the patients, people, performance and partnership. So we are meeting those corporate objectives with the work that we're doing. And then I'm just going to pass over to Claire, who's, like I said, she's been absolutely amazing in leading a lot of this on the ward. So she's going to go into a bit more detail from her aspects.
Hi. Our little therapy team, there's usually 5 of us, and we engage with the patients and relatives on the ward every day. We've come up with activities that will involve therapy dog, so patients can interact. We've done gardening sessions. We've encouraged patients, once they're up and dressed in their own clothes, if we notice there's activities or anything they want to engage in, we've been engaging in those. We've done table tennis events, football events. but we've actually found the Breakfast Club is really beneficial. It's broke down so many barriers between patients that have felt lonely and isolated at home, to come and sit with family and friends and to feel like they can have a conversation again. We've had a gardening club which families and relatives got involved, and it's nice because we have a Twitter account, so the families felt like they could be involved and see the pictures. And then once we've progressed patients home, the relatives have sent pictures back to us of them gardening outside with the plants and potting the plants outside that they've made. We're looking at a development with the college. This is our health and beauty. This is our first one that we're doing. We've actually been in contact with a very big company called Aston & Fincher, and explained we've just gone through Recondition the Nation, how important it is, and how this is a very big new step for the NHS to be involved with a college, and they're very kindly going to be supporting us with a new development of a new room, which will be able to offer hair and beauty, massages, and maybe extend that into more opportunity for other students to come and join. The students that came along have actually overcome so many barriers. You know, they've never been on a hospital floor before and heard noises, and been very nervous. And once we've given them a lot of reassurance that of what to expect, and they've been in and seen the patients, they've gone away with a really positive experience. So we're really looking forward to this starting in September. And as I say, it's very new. We've welcomed a lot of volunteers onto the ward as well over the last couple of months, and these have been pinnacle in our positive effect with patients. We've even had a lot of doctors, the consultants joining in, and activities. All our activities go live on our Twitter account, so patients can keep in touch and see what activities are going on. It's been an absolute so successful. And as I say, we've got therapy dogs, we've got activities, we've got breakfast clubs, and the volunteers get involved with those. And we also let them lead on opportunities they want to do, and they feel like they can develop, so they feel part of our team. It's been so rewarding. And I'd say,
yeah, it's quite a quick brief one. And any questions at all, we're happy to answer.
That's brilliant, Dan and Claire. Superb. I love the work up there, and obviously I picked up on it from Twitter and asked you. And the thing that you have got is really great senior support, and your chief nurse, Kev Parker Evans, who I've known for many years, since he was a ward manager many years ago. You can tell him that many years ago. You know, very, very clearly supporting you guys at a very sort of senior level, which often helps.
Yeah.
So what I'd suggest is, anybody want to put a question in the chat, obviously the chat will carry on after the end of the meeting. You can pick those questions up maybe, or if you want to put your emails in the chat now, that would be really helpful in terms of time now. I will, if you can ping your slides over, that would be great, and I'll share them across the rest of the team. But it looks like we're at time. I just want to thank everybody again for your time this afternoon. It's great that so many people can join us each month. We'll meet all back up again on the 19th of September. Lots more to talk about. Anybody wants to share their good stuff, please drop me a message and I'll get you on the agenda. But for now, see you all, everybody.
Thank you.